but he answered my prayers. And so in February 2016, I went on a business trip. And it was to San Diego and Las Vegas. And in San Diego, I started having these flu-like symptoms. And I had excruciating stomach pain. I was projectile vomiting everywhere. I looked super pale, and my coworkers asked me if I wanted to go to the hospital. And I said no. I'm super scared of hospitals and doctors because it's always bad news, so I tried to tough it out. And we made our 5-hour trip to Vegas, and had to go set up for the show, and I stayed in the car because I was hurting so bad that I still couldn't walk. So whenever they got back, we went to a restaurant because I said it might be a good idea for you to eat. Well, 10 minutes after we got to the restaurant, I went to cardiac arrest, and I flatlined on the restaurant floor. And luckily there's this off-duty police officer who was there, and he came over and started giving me correct CPR because the waitress wasn't. And so he gave me CPR until the paramedics got there. And when the paramedics got there, they hooked me up to a ventilator, and they recorded me having no pulse and no blood pressure for about 8 minutes. And so they revived me on scene, and they rushed me to the closest hospital. And the doctors, they put me through a CT scan. They saw air in my abdomen, and for some reason they asked me if I wanted to go into surgery, and I said no. So they put me in an ICU room, and the doctor came in, he pressed on my stomach, and he said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much does this hurt? And apparently I said a 4, and he said, okay, well, if there was something seriously wrong with you, then you should be in a lot more pain, given I was on IV and fluid, so not sure. And so they told me that they weren't going to discharge me, I had to stay overnight. Thankfully they did, because the next morning I went into cardiac arrest and I flatlined again. And at this point, the doctors, I had like less than 1% chance of surviving. So they told the owner of the company, who was my boyfriend at the time, to come in and say his goodbyes because they really didn't expect me to survive. So they rushed me to emergency exploratory surgery, and they started cutting me open 2 inches, and just gallons and gallons of bile and stomach acid just kept flowing out of my stomach. So 2 inches went down to 15 inches, and they took out all of my organs, they cleaned them, they examined them, and that's when he saw a 2-inch perforation in my duodenum. So it goes your esophagus, stomach, duodenum, small intestine. So that was leaking out a bunch of stomach acid, and I had been septic for about 36 hours. So he saw the hole. This is my scar. And so he saw the hole, and he realized that he couldn't repair it. So he had to basically make a gastric bypass, cut that part of my stomach off, and reroute it to the left side of my body. So now my stomach is attached to my small intestine, and through this whole thing, I had less than 1% chance of surviving, and he didn't expect me to eat a solid meal ever again in my life. So they stapled me up with 30 staples, and they brought me to the ICU room. They put me in an induced coma because I was very critical. My body just went through a lot of trauma. And so then I started going to renal failure. And normally when you go into renal failure, they put you on dialysis. Well, they couldn't put me on dialysis because my heart rate was a steady 140. Dialysis increases your heart rate, so that was going to be dangerous. So I stayed there for a week with that heart rate, and luckily after prayers and by the grace of God, my heart rate started to go down to the 80s, and they performed 3 rounds of dialysis, and during that time, my blood pressure was super low, so they had to put me on blood pressure medication, and that brings all your blood from your extremities to your organs, which can create amputation. So that's dangerous. And then I had fluid surrounding my lungs and inside my lungs, so they had to perform thoracentesis. That's whenever they take a huge needle, they put it in between your ribs, and they suction out all the fluid. Another dangerous procedure. And so after 3 rounds of dialysis and then trying to take my tube out 3 times, I woke up from my coma on February 11th. And that's whenever my hospital journey began. And because I was in a coma for so long, my body forgot how to walk, so I had to relearn how to walk, and the doctors, like I said, didn't expect me to eat solid food, so I had to go through different phases of a liquid diet. And so on February 25th, that's whenever I was discharged from the hospital, and I had lived in Statesboro. I graduated from Georgia Southern in 2015, so I was just working down here. And my parents were like, okay, you have to come and live after this. I was so weak, I was skin and skeleton. I couldn't walk up the stairs by myself. I couldn't pick up a gallon of milk. My parents had to put my dishes away for me because the dishes were too heavy. So after about 2 months of me eating constantly because my belly went back to the size of a baby, so I'd eat every 2 hours, and I just constantly walked and tried to get my strength back. For some reason, something was tugging on my heart to come back to Statesboro, so I just told my parents, I said, no, I'm going back. And so I texted my friend Skylar, and she sings at convention. And we also have a story too. She's been praying for me since she's known me 4 years ago. And so she was just super excited when I told her that I wanted to go to church with her. And I went to church in May 2016, and now I've gone every single Sunday. And it's just a blessing because now I'm walking my life with Christ, and I'm just so hungry to get to know Him. I go to church every Sunday. I read the Bible every morning at 6 a.m. I go to bed reading the Bible. I have a Bible study group now, like it's not just Sunday. It's almost like every day of the week now, and it's just amazing. So I pray for He saved me from death, but He also saved me from myself, because now I'm walking life with Him, and I've unleashed all my chains. I was rebaptized again on December 18th, and I'm just so grateful to be alive, and I feel more alive than ever. Thank you.